I think we're waiting for a couple of people to tune in, but we are starting. First part of the announcement is that tomorrow, this being Friday, we're going to be doing our outdoor training with masks, social distancing, emphasizing motion. Usually we do weapons work outside. That's a little easier for the social distancing. And being Halloween, okay, I'm kind of wanting to do a special thing because Halloween's kind of a nice thing. So if you're coming to the outdoors training, option of costumes. Okay, I have my costume picked out. It's going to be one of my older ones. I would always try to do a new costume every Halloween, and this year would be harder to go out and shop for a new costume. So I'm just going to do a repeat. And so 11:30 is when it starts. I figured what we try is 11:30 to 12:30. And from 12:30, we'll just start, I'm going to take some food. Okay, so we could have kind of maybe a get together, celebrate the dojo, Halloween. And so if you can't make the training, it'll be online, okay, at the usual place, the usual link, as will be it's not really a potluck because we're going to bring our own food and eat it, but kind of a shared meal space. And if you kind of feel just like, you just don't want to do the training, but you'd like to kind of join in for the food, put your costume on, optional, obviously, and join us. Just have somebody to eat with us around 12:30. So, that's coming up tomorrow. And so today, it's a little bit off of a telephone meeting I had with Robert Nadeau Sensei yesterday. And we talk about the lower half, the support half. And that's a very important one, and not necessarily all that evident in those sensei's words, okay? And we've been reading from The Heart of Aikido, but this is another book that, I studied with, and it really is the biography of O-sensei by his son, the second Doshu, Kishomaru Ueshiba. And towards the end, okay, this is towards the end of the book. It's actually page 360. And this is the second Doshu. In conclusion, let me list the 5 points about Aikido as composed by O-sensei in the last years of his life. Okay, now the next 5 points are O-sensei, not Kishomaru. Okay? Aikido is a great path that endures forever. It is a philosophy that absorbs and integrates all things. So we tend to think of it as put your gi on, go to a dojo and train. All right? And, obviously this is towards the end of O-sensei's physical life here, okay? And he says it's pretty deep, okay, all right? Or all-encompassing if you're a certain sort of person with it, which obviously he was, okay? The second point, Aikido is a truth granted by heaven and earth. It is important to make use of the Neno Kuni, which is translated here as underworld. According to Lauren Harris Sensei from the Do Sensei San Francisco School, Neno Kuni refers to, in the Kojiki, the land of the roots. The third point, the path and philosophy of Aikido seek to create harmony among heaven, earth, and human beings. 4, Aikido becomes complete when each person follows the path according to their own nature, practices ascetic training, and seeks to become one with the greater universe. 5, Aikido is a path of great compassion, resulting in the glory and prosperity of the universe. Okay? And if you read his stuff, it's pretty standard, when he goes more into the greater philosophy of Aikido. So, a part of that, there are 5 points. This is a part of the second point which sticks out to me because it's so different than everything else. And among, his written translated teachings, it is not mentioned except here. Okay? And I'll read the second point again. Aikido is a truth granted by heaven and earth. It is important also to make use of the Ne no Kuni, underworld or land of the roots. So what really sticks out to me, because it's only mentioned once in my particular study of O Sensei's words, Ne no Kuni, the underworld. And I remember when I came across it, it was a familiar term. And then what I realized was, ibuki hanachitemu, ibuki hanachiteru ne no koni, soko no kuni, ibuki hanachitemu, kako ibuki hanachiteru ne no koni, soko no kuni ni umasu, ayasasura hime toyu kami. That, I try to do it every day, but the actual kamigoto, which is one of the ritual Shinto prayers that O-sensei did, is mentioned, the Ne no Kuni. So it was really right out of not so much just his words, but the actual practice. He says prayer, for him, was a very important part of what he did. And so, he highlights the underworld. And so Nado Sensei and I, we had this discussion. In fact, tonight, if you want to tune into his quote-unquote show, then he said he's going to go into it a bit. And there's a variety of different ways of interpreting it. That the Ne no Kuni, the underworld, the under half, is something that oftentimes the greater glory of the universe, and there's an under support to all that. And if you just get caught up in the words of the philosophy, you may miss that. If you just get caught up in rebellion to that, which I guess a lot of people were when O-sensei was alive, you get caught up in a more mechanistic sense of what the physical movements are, and you get better at it, and there starts to be some flow. And that is an also important thing, because one of the things he actually says here is, let's see, the third point, the path and philosophy of Aikido seek to create harmony among heaven, earth, and human beings. So we're included kind of within the heaven, earth, humanity. Ken, Chi, Jin in Japanese. I know that much, okay? So the other thing that I think is hinted at here, create harmony among heaven and earth. That you can look at it, the heaven, the earth represent to some degree elements of us. And he's including us there, but then again, the heaven and the earth being in balance. The upper finer, the denser, heavier. And then here we are. Okay? And there's sometimes a tendency to go purely here, or to get very small here, and kind of just sort of get attracted mainly to this through the heavier, denser earth. And so my sense is there's a balance. The upper, finer dimensions, the lower, denser, more earthly dimensions. And then there's what he calls right there, the Nenokuni. And so that right there is for me, and you know, actually, you know, having this conversation with Nado Sensei yesterday, it brought up a lot of my history. That I really got attracted to a lot of his work. I'm talking about Nado Sensei, because I had, you know, kind of the background, you know, the Shingu period of my training, or the Japan period of my training, because I did make some trips, not a lot, to Honko Dojo, and one trip to the Aiki Shrine in Ibaraki Prefecture, the Iwama Dojo. But my basic training was with Hikizuchi Sensei, Ano, Tojima, Yanase. They were all Shihan. Okay? And so that's the bulk of my training in Japan. So, you know, you sort of, yeah, I did visit maybe Tokyo much more than I did the northern center where the Aiki Shrine is put. But one thing about the Shingu Dojo is that O-sensei's beard and hair, or elements of it, I don't know, maybe other places according to other sources, is actually enshrined in the Shingu Dojo. So that sense, you know, of that other dimension, okay? You know, I mean, we do morning prayers after the morning class most every day. Hikizuchi Sensei would chant, you know, the formal Shinto prayers that O-sensei chanted. And I found out later that his actual pitch and his breath were based on O-sensei. Abe Sensei from Osaka said the same thing. Abe Sensei said, my breath work was chanting things like the Amatsu no Rito and the Kamigoto, using O-sensei's breath patterns, and probably also studying his use of vibration or pitch. Okay, so, you know, we were totally steeped in that. All right. I mean, you know, if I would say Tokyo or even Iwama, you know, with the Aiki Shrine, you know, it's kind of interesting that it was fun to go there because, you know, it was basically at my level, and, you know, I know there's more than that, but it was basically technical. You train in technique and you have partners and you practice the movements. And, you know, both places, it was 4 years removed from when O-sensei was alive. So I think there's a lot of his energy there. But the actual sense, you know, of that period in Shingu, and I think it's probably different now, because a lot of the teachers, Ono Sensei is teaching at another dojo, Yanase Sensei has sort of does his own thing. So everybody doesn't go to the dojo. Hikizuchi Sensei and Tojima Sensei have crossed over to the other side, so they're not physically here anymore. And so, you know, what you're left with sometimes is ritual and form. And what was nice about that period was there was kind of this immersion in something. And I came back here and the docent called one day. I was in Santa Cruz, said, I'm going to start a dojo in San Jose. You want me to be a part of it? I said, yeah, not thinking it through very well. So I was part of the original teaching in the San Jose school. It opened in July of 1976. I taught Friday nights. I would actually go train at Stanford University with Frank Duran-Sensei. Then I would drive down to San Jose, teach the evening. I would sleep over in what was the office. And then I would teach kids on Saturday morning. That was the trip. And I continued teaching kids for decades, actually. Okay? And then I would teach the late morning class, which is probably about 10:30 to 12 noon. So that was all there. But what happened is I started going to the Monday night classes that the docents taught. And one of the real approaches he had, he was very much into the under support. And I was amazed that a lot of, the experiences, you have from this immersion, which you kind of put into the ritual Shinto and the more classical way of training, that it touched some amazing places. And, he was he wasn't anti, it's just he had this sense for, okay, what we're really going to do is major in that bottom support. He used to use the term, he probably still does, base. So that was just something that I thought maybe we would kind of touch on a little bit here, then go into the next room and we'll do some movement around it. But, the under support, the underworld, what's the best way of kind of examining it? Well, one way of looking at it, I have an idea. It can be anything, to be very simple. In fact, simple ideas are best. Some people say, I have a dumb question. Well, guess what? Dumb questions are the best. So let's just say my idea is I'm going to stand. I really can't stand for my idea. I really need to integrate my physical system into that idea. So I know I'm going to stand up. Okay, we'll just kind of move it back a little bit here. But the idea is supported to some degree by the physical body and its energy. The idea has a certain amount of energy. And sometimes say, oh yeah, and then we do something. But there was a support through that we might have missed. So here we go. We say idea, energy. The energy supports the idea. So there's a standing. So that part of it is sometimes not so clear. So Aikido is about ki, it's about energy. But the relationship of idea to energy, to some degree, is a relationship of mind to body, body back to mind. So if I'm going to stand, I could just stand up. There's always some level of support. But if you start to study, among all the dialogue going in my head, I'm focusing on an idea, stand. What about here? I get the support, which is energy. The energy and the idea are somewhat equal. I'm going to stand up. Okay. Or I'm going to stand up and trip over myself. I'm going to stand up. That's a clear idea. In fact, as I said, dumb questions are the best. Simple ideas are best to get going to understand the support system. Any idea requires a support from energy, your energy, larger energy. So if you have any, I don't know how many people sitting in chairs or anything, but anything you're going to do, I'm going to move my right hand. Move it. Right side of my body. So the idea is here. There is the. I'm going to extend ki. It's an idea. Supporting that is the energy. As we get better, it becomes very quick. In fact, it gets quicker because when your idea and your energy start to get into balance, boom, 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 stand. Or conversely, my idea is to sit, sit. My idea is to sit still. If I want to scratch my face, so I'm getting some energy, so I settle with the energy. I notice things like my breathing starts to kind of get more even and goes deeper, but naturally deeper. So idea, energy, mind, body start to get a balance. But for most of us, there's always some energy, but the idea and the energy tend to, some days it's great, some days everything is like that. So idea might just be to sit. Oh, I really want to meditate. I really want to do that. And that's a great idea, but you gotta sit. Then your nose starts to itch and your back starts to kind of feel stiff. But be very easy with it. And the sense of it is the energy is kind of the lower half support. The idea is up here. And if I'm going to meditate, when the idea and the energy start to kind of get more in sync, things happen like my breathing starts to get deeper, fuller, without my really making that a goal. And I feel like I'm in a calm space. This is again what happens is idea, energy go into balance, a whole realm of what Nado Sensei calls sensing. There's a sense, okay? Now the sense of the calm could be an energy field that's calm, has a support called feel. And when I do that, then all of a sudden, that's a good meditation place. So calm. Even if my goal is just to learn to meditate a little bit, the support system is more like I'm just going to sit here and stare at my third eye. I'm going to sit here and chant Om or a mantra. Those are good systems. But what Osensei was talking about, the support half, the land of the roots, the underworld. I'm doing this movement. Great things gather and boom. So, okay, I got an idea, I'm following a form. And again, that can be somewhat idea, but the actual sense of it, calmer, deeper. Begin to feel the energies here starting to kind of gather as well. So in other words, there may be energies out there, but okay. And then there's a natural time when you're going to do a variety of different moves. There's a flexibility. But each of those, there's some sort of an idea concept, but it also is very much a mind-body support. All right. So we're going to move into the other room. which we have set up light-wise today, which is good. So I'll put this here. See, adjust just right about to there, which means right about here, I am full body. Okay? So I'll put that down for a while. All right, so support. The idea, there's always some of this support half, but most of the time, idea leads, like the whole thing, mind leads, body follows. But the support is more like mind leads, but body supports. Idea, there's energy. Idea, there's energy. So the support system says that there is a half that most of us do not tap. I'm in my idea world. And of course, there's, there's some energy there. The idea gets very big. But all of a sudden, I'm kind of in a very vacuous state with it, or a very, very scattered state, or hypnotized state. You can hypnotize yourself in meditation. It's really funny that way. But for that amount, there's also a support equal to it. So again, deeper, deeper, deeper feeling. So the conversation yesterday with the docent said was interesting because I started to go back to, okay, certain things that when I got back from Japan, I think it was about 1966, one decade later, 76, okay. Any sort of motion. Involves a type of harmony. And sometimes we work the center, but I have an idea of a center, but there's a lower support experience field of the center. Which is very important. So I thought that it was fascinating that in all the my study of Osensei's works, the reference to the land of the roots, I found once, which, and many things he talked about, but that once. Now, as that happens, for example, let's just say we have a seat, so I can do full body. We'll just do a simple 1 and 2. Okay. It's good. I can do 1, 2, 1, 2. I like doing that motion. But there's an idea. See, if I'm doing it from the idea, it feels kind of rocky, but settle a little bit. And there's a support. There's the idea that we're going to do the roll, and there's also the energy for it. And that balance is always there. It's just we get to, and the idea is fun. But idea, I'm going to do this roll. Take a second or two, settle. I notice certain things, like, for example, I'm much more present in my lower half of the body. When I roll 1, 2, 1, 2 on the idea, there's some support because the body's moving, but it's much more jarring in my spine. But when I do this, so all of a sudden there's a bit of balance that comes up. So words right about here, when I actually, the idea is supposed to be moving off of that. We start to kind of tap the support half of it, the energy. Now the system flows a bit more. Think words like center, ground becomes more experiential. I just switched sides because, to some degree, I want more balance. I was rolling with my right foot forward. Now I crossed over to my left. And what's kind of interesting is the upper idea area, when it's supported by, the body was saying, okay, you need a little balance on the left side, or the mind idea and the body were in such communication that all of a sudden I switched to the left side. If my idea right here is be still, the energy to be still kind of, which is energy, be still, stillness. So that becomes a study. And so, we did in Japan a lot of the ritual type of things, and we listened to the chanting. We're going to get into sound, breath, and movement just a little bit. But I thought, you can never never hurts. Kind of realize, that there is this support. Okay. And oftentimes the support is the less obvious because I can get a lot done running around off the energy. There's a certain amount, the body has to do something. I got to do that. Okay, I'll do it. But I got to do that, then it takes a second or two. There's the energy to do that. Huh? So so wherever you are, I'm standing here. I'm going to stand here. That's an idea. Get the energy to stand here. Now, for example, right there, I'm starting to feel my feet. And it's like, the idea gets some balance. There's an energy that's balanced or equal or supporting the idea. It doesn't have to be a great idea. Now I start to get things like roots, or sort of standing in kind of a magic pool of energy. Those are things that are this and this go into balance, and all of a sudden there's a whole sensing that comes in. And then maybe one more click. What supports the sensing is a feel. And the feel element, I'm sensing what's out there, but all of a sudden, when the feel element comes in, I'm a part of it. And so the sense of it is that it's an energy field. Feel of it, sense, feels of it starts to kind of, not just seeing it and sensing it out there, but feeling it. It's almost like this. I'm a partner to the field. So things like that, are things that I thought, that's fascinating. Okay? Things we do. For example, my idea. I'm going to swing the sword. Okay? And, I'm going to swing the sword. Okay? And my body is doing something off of that idea. Swing the sword. there's an energy that supports it. Boom. Now I notice several things. My shoulders relax. I'm not. Yeah, I'm leaning, and even my hips are moving. My head, shoulders are leading that. So it's a heavy strike. If you notice right here and right here, there's a gap there. Boom, boom. Okay, so I'm doing the movement and the body is moving. If I can take a second or two, got this idea. All of a sudden, there's an energy support. Boom, boom. Feel the energy support as kind of a pulse. And both halves of the pulse are in balance. Then, boom. So because my hands are moving, my feet are moving, boom, I got the mechanics of the cut. But when I just pause for a little bit, get that bottom support half, I sort of notice, that field of energy. There's a beat, there's a pulse. Boom. So anything is practice for that. Right? And one of the tricky things is certain things we have to sort of learn. Okay, I'm learning how to do this change. I'm learning, how right here I can do that change on the other side. So, you get the thumb down, thumb up change, figure 8, thumb down, thumb up change, boom, boom, things like that. Huh? And I'm learning a form. My body's going that way. But throughout all of that, what if all of those machinations are ideas? And ideas have their own flow, but there increasingly is kind of what you call a support half to it. So we get movements like that, or movements like that, or movements like that, or movements like that. Initially, it might be a little complex for you, so you're doing that movement and that movement. It's an idea. We'll settle a little bit. Get the support half, the energy to it. Boom. 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 The idea gets a little fuller. So it's like you're moving one side. So once you go boom, then the other side. Initially, that's a little bit of an idea out there. But boom. So a little more with that lower half and boom. That comes out. Oh. Now I can be studying how to do that change. Well, idea, energy. Okay? And so that part of it is, some study. And it's very interesting that Sensei really talks about the land of the roots, in terms of his words and everything. That's the only time in my study of, mainly through the translations that John Stevens Sensei did, that's mentioned. And that was mentioned, and that was apparently done fairly close to the end of his earthly life. Okay, I'm going to do this motion, do this motion, do this motion, this motion. Okay, but on the other, and that's an idea, and the body's kind of doing it, and I get better at it. But all of a sudden, there's that lower half, boom, boom, boom. And it's almost like, there's a heart beating. Boom, 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 boom. So things that start to happen. See, if I get better with the idea in road practice. Boom, boom. The under support half, that's how the energy tends to show. Ideas up here and out there. Increasingly adding that under support. Ooh. I'm going to do that motion. And I have to learn proper grip and in triangle out there doing that movement. You know, I get better at it out there. Idea, let me pause for a bit, let the energy, the support half of it come in. Boom, 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 boom. So I notice, for example, it's almost like there's a stream of energy. So what moves first, that, or my feet, and then that? Or is this what I'm holding, and that stream, boom. One of the things, though, since they said, move like a beam of light. Move like a beam of light. Okay, I'm going to try to move like a beam of light. Move like a beam of light. You get the support half of it. Boom, you move like a beam of light. Okay? And sometimes, you know, if you've done this for a while, you have some of this without consciously understanding we're tapping a tremendous opportunity of exploring things from that support half. Okay, so that's a little bit what we're looking at. I'm going to check the time. And for whatever reason, I'm going to turn the clock. So let's do a check-in. So those of you that kind of tuned in a little later, we're going into what Sensei hinted at when he talked about the land of the roots. Land of the roots. The support half. Idea, there's energy. Now, after a while, this is the idea realm, nothing wrong with it. And off of that, I can do that, and I can get better out there in the idea because there's some energy. I got to get to class so I can practice, okay? But boom, there's an energy that supports that motion. It comes in, the location is more of an under. Okay, boom. And for me, for example, the idea is good. I love idea, I love imagination. But imagination is different than idea. In some sense, as you start to mind supported by energy, it creates not an imaginary, but an imagination space. All right, so what do I sense right there? I sense a stream. Okay, all right, boom. Now, what do I feel? I feel like the staff, my body, my idea concept, and boom, they're all one. Okay, if I need to travel a longer distance, you know, I can be reaching out there, or I can immerse a little bit more. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, and these changes are just a more complex set of ideas supported by energies. Okay, and let's do this. Anybody? So we're working off of our discussion, the Sensei and my discussion of the under support half. Does anybody? As I put it this way, simple practices, simple ideas are the best ways to practice. okay? And dumb questions are the best. So does anybody have a question, dumb or otherwise? Anybody have a statement? We're talking about that support half that oftentimes we miss. Anybody?
Sensei, this is Cliff. I have a dumb question.
Sure.
So when I first started doing Aikido,
Yeah.
I trained with Don Levine Sensei, who was a sociology professor at the University of Chicago.
Yeah, I met him. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah.
I think I may have introduced you at a summer camp in Santa Cruz when he came once with his son. Anyway,
Yeah.
if you hadn't met him previously.
No, he actually did some of the retreats in Menlo Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a big fan of Duran Sensei. Anyway,
Yeah.
Don introduced a lot of philosophy of Aikido with the idea that in Western philosophy, you have the mind-body dichotomy.
Yeah.
And Aikido is like the opposite of that. It's mind-body unity. And so I'm trying to take that idea and square it with what you're saying about intent and then doing, right? Because even though I feel that what you're saying is correct and jives with my experience, it still feels a little bit like that duality coming back.
Well, basically what it is we all are in that duality moving towards a unity. See, the unity itself, well, since they talk about heaven, earth, and humanity, and probably heaven is a dimension, also a dimension of us. Earth is a dimension, also a dimension of earth, and there we are. Heaven can represent an idea. We should all get along. The world should be. But right now, we're right here, kind of separated from A and B, okay? And so, just simple things, working on our system. You can just say, idea is mind, body. And the reality of things is that we're here. And we're working towards a unity. Now, as I get that unity, for example, I get the idea, I'm going to do this motion. I'm going to pause for a little bit. We start to get the actual juice, boom, 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 boom. Now, right about there, if somebody says, okay, what do you sense, feel there? I sense, feel a heartbeat, not my own. Like the universe has an aliveness. We tend to think of it as an empirical thing out there. But what if the universe had an aliveness heart to it? Boom. A resonance echo to itself. Boom. And as I say, how do I feel right there? Boom, I feel lighter and more in tune with it. Boom, boom. So when we get into more what I call the sense field experiences, it's not just a philosophy. Or you become a living philosophy. You're not a philosopher. You are a living philosophy. So that would be my attempt to answer that very important question of yours. Anything else?
Thank you, Sensei.
Yeah, no, it's the point where, in other words, we can intellectually understand a hell of a lot. But the support system, since they said study and train, and he only mentioned that underworld, land of the roots, in all the words I've studied once. And it was a series of statements he made towards the end of his life. And so by the actual scarcity of that, I'm really saying that is very important. All right, boom, boom, boom. So these are a series of very complex ideas after a while that are supported by some energies that line up and support them. Boom, 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 boom. You never do that in martial arts, right? But that's any motion, any movement, any movement or change is an idea. It's better initially to practice simple ideas and lining up to simple energy. But I like to, my own thing, I like to and so main people I study O Sensei. I study Chet Baker music. Okay? I have studied Sada Haruo because he wrote an excellent book. And I guess, in terms of basketball, I study Stephen Curry. I study not that. I try to study what they do. And all of them have some sort of understanding of that's good, I need to do that, but they have the support of something else, their idea. I want to play NBA basketball. Okay? Support it. I want to be an all-star. Support it. I want to be most valuable player of the NBA. Support it. I want to be the very first and only unanimous MVP of the NBA. Support it. I want to win multiple titles and be an example to the world about things like strength in numbers and support it. So that part of it, those are very simple statements, but any sort of motion, that's about 2 or 3 complex ideas that the energies just sort of support. Okay? So I hope that maybe begins to answer something. Certain things you don't really have an answer for. It's just that what happens when they play this way. In other words, okay, I'm going to do something. There's an under support half. And the easiest way of looking at it. Idea. Under support is energy. Mind, important, mind leads, but is supported by the body. And therefore, in that support balance, there isn't that dichotomy. That's why I can explain it. Okay, Cliff, does that sound reasonable a little bit?
Yeah, it does, and I think I'm going to have to ponder it for a while.
Yeah. This is something that, because I did the same thing, okay? Because, I spent, basically 2 years in Japan, 2 separate stays, but about 2 years. They were shorter years. They weren't like 12 months, but, there was like 9 months and 8.5 months or something like that. And then, I just wound up going to those sensei's classes. And he was really working a lot of the under support. Yesterday, again, for those of you who came in a little later, we wound up having this discussion about the under support half. And so I just started going back over my history. And what was very interesting was, I practiced all this sort of ritual stuff and also been in some very, very experiential places, that was basically, it was all explained in terms of O-sensei's cosmology and kami and Shinto, right? And the Do-sensei was kind of doing this stuff with the under support half, and I said, wow, all of that stuff became somewhat experiential, as opposed to I'm in it, I'm training, which is I'm grateful for. But there's that area where, okay, and so the actual idea or mind of something or yourself and the actual support half or energy when they get into balance. So since they said heaven, earth, humanity, the heaven or the idea, the earth, the ground substance, and us as a consciousness realizing how the system works and how we are a part of that system and how that whole system to some degree is inside us. So that would be my basic sense, and that's a lot of words, but other than that, everything gets very, very complex. Okay, see Robert Fraser, for example, when I first started, he and Nado Sensei did a lot of work together. They kind of went their own separate directions because Robert Fraser Sensei was in academia, okay, and Nado Sensei was teaching excellent workshops and kind of opening Aikido schools. So they just, sometimes people just get to where they go their own direction, and then, and I think they both, basically did what they were going to do anyway. So, but initially, what would happen is Robert Fraser would explain the philosophy, and Nado Sensei would go somehow and embody it. Not that Fraser Sensei couldn't, but there was that sense where, Nado Sensei would, okay. And, as I said, I'm not saying that Robert Fraser Sensei didn't, but what I will say is his explanations were much clearer. And Nado Sensei's presence supporting that were really good. And then what happened with Nado Sensei is that when Robert Fraser Sensei was out of the equation, Nado Sensei would create his own words, which were always ever changing, what they mean and stuff like that. And so a lot of what he says is not clear. Okay, so we are about at that time. So I'm just gonna move and go back into the other room. So talking about the under support half. See right here, I'm lifting up a stick, but it's an idea. I'll do this movement. And under support half, I start to become more conscious of the right-left balance. And I'm doing this, raising the bar, so to speak. I can be part of that. In the body and the mind, body is where the energy comes in. There's energy in mind too, but when it's just mainly mind, without support of the body, a lot of times what happens is things get kind of confusing. That's where stress comes in. Okay? Anybody with a question or comment on that? Because the under support half is an important one. And as I said, Sensei, in all of my research, mentioned it once. Which means to me, I'm sort of that person that's, likes the detective work and say, huh. Because if you talk about things a lot, Aikido is love. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. Okay, Aikido is about harmony. That's pretty obvious. But he mentions the underworld once, the support half once. He says, do not neglect the importance of the land of the roots, or the underworld, in all of these other words. Oh, so for me, that's kind of a clue. So it just took me back to 1976. And in that sense, I was doing all this stuff that I went, yeah, that's really cool. Because you don't have to wade through all the Japanese terms. And it was a very simplified version of anything. If you're going to do something, it's an idea. You could do it off of the idea. If you pause for a bit, there's an energy that supports it. And initially, there's a lot of noise around the idea, so there's an easy settle, a clearing. And it's good to practice on, the Aikido techniques are not supposed to be, okay, I'm going to do this. You're supposed to, there's an energy that supports that. There's an energy that supports that. And as you get a clearer, as the energy support comes in, the idea gets clearer. And the idea itself, when she starts to say, okay, instead of I'm trying to do from the idea, the energy comes in better. So it's kind of good sometimes just to practice in very, very easy, simple ways. Okay, now, that said, I like complexity. I like diversity. But each of those moves, that's a movement that goes here, that's a movement that goes here, that's a movement that goes here. Each of those movements is supported by an energy. Go that way, that way, that way, that way, boom. I love Stephen Curry, boom, boom. I love listening to Chet Baker because he plays deep, low. But he also, he can move, right? Some of his riffs, people go, he's just all ballads and slow, and no. Okay. So anyway, I like the variety, complexity, but that motion, that motion, that motion. So I can be out here doing it, but that and that. Several levels of development turn into that. So your movements are a chance or an everyday exercise. We used to do stuff like just, I'm going to walk across the room. I'm going to do it for my idea. If I pause for a little bit, just a walking across the room, back and forth. Getting a little practice in, here's the idea. Welcoming the support energy, which may be a little easy, settle, open, and I walk. And I walk back. Or I'm going to swing a sword. Swing a sword, that's the idea, but I say, no. I just have to work at it, put my shoulder and lean into it. I get hit in this upper body, right? All of a sudden I say, okay, I'm going to swing the sword. Settle a bit, grip is better. Boom. And what happens right there, okay, the energy comes in a pulse. Boom, 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 boom. Now, you might want to start a little slower. Go, okay, idea, I'm swinging from the idea. Pause, settle. Okay. Boom, boom. If Steph Curry is teaching a basketball camp, he's going to teach everything he does, but he's teaching to kids. Some of whom probably can surprise him because they've been studying him. Boom. And those that are doing it properly, he might give a little extra tip to. All right? But boom, 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 boom. Each of those is an idea supported by an energy. A balance just allows a shift of track, going back, forward to back, right to left, Forward, back, or forward, left, forward, boom. So, I study movement like that, because to me, it lets me know what Aikido was a lot better than Yurimi Tenkan. Because Yurimi Tenkan is supposed to teach you that. And it might. There's an energy for entering. There's an energy for turning. So you can do it that way. I just find most people get locked into a kind of what we call more primitive. Primal is good energy, primal. Primitive, boy, I wish we could invent the wheel so we didn't have to carry all this stuff. You see what I mean? That's primitive. Primitive and primal. Most people confuse them. That's too primitive. No, it's primal. Primal is very simple. My cat decides she wants to jump on the bed, she jumps on the bed. Okay? That's not to say we go back to animal nature, but there's a sense where there's a primalness to that balance. And that's kind of what is very fun about it. If I get a little too up here and start to do too many things out there, I lose touch with me. But if I can say, okay, I'm gonna do this and this and this, right? Then we're gonna do that. That's about 3 or 4 changes. You may not be able to do that right now. I'm gonna blow my basketball up, okay? And I'm gonna go outside and I'm gonna start dribbling again, just for the hell of it. And then I'm gonna get 2 basketballs and just try to do some of it. Because I was doing that, and then I haven't been in the gym in, 8, 9 months. So, I just figured I could dribble on pavement. Because it's the same principle as that, or, moving here, or doing that. That you can practice. You are then your own uke. Nage, shiho nage, turns to uke, coming in, feeling the motion, nage. On the nage part, nage initially is receptive, moves in positive. Uke starts out very positive, but learns receptive. And those are lessons that you learn kind of through, I can intellectualize everything, or I can, there's energy to be uke. There's energy to be nage. All right, and if I'm in the idea too much out there, I go in and out of things too much. Okay, anybody with a question or comment on that one? So we were kind of going through, the whole sense, Nado Sensei said tonight is going to go into the under half. Anybody? Question? A little bit.
I have a question, Sensei. It just took me a second to turn on the mic.
Yeah.
When I in a number of classes that I took with Nado Sensei a few years ago, he talked about bass. He talked a lot about bass. Do you think that what O Sensei was saying about the under support is the same thing that Nado Sensei was saying when he said bass?
Yeah, well, actually, words change as your emphasis changes. You need a base for anything. Even if you're just a factory worker, you need a base. But most people get caught up in a very low level of something. So his big catchword was base. He still talks about base, but nowhere near as much as he talks about other things. But base really is, that under support half. Then an idea. There's support, energy to that idea. What I develop personally from that is base. So yeah, I guess I'm teaching bass. Okay, I'm teaching bass, bum bum. But really, got an idea, sport energy, like in all these, one of the things, the qualities that comes up is base. So that would be my sense of it. So he talks about base still, but not as much as he used to. But he'll say, yeah, I think people lack base. And one of the criticisms of Aikido, as we're going forward in it, is that, yeah, base is actually starting to be less present. Okay. And you also get people in reaction to it where they go out there into the more application aspect of it. But see, the whole thing is geared to be, yes, there's a technique. I'm going to do an ikkyo. It's an idea, right? And somebody, says, okay, we're going to, and yeah, they get more body into it, but it's kind of out their body. And then, so, okay, idea, I'm going to do an ikkyo. There's a support. Oh, okay. What happened is when the idea and the energy got a little bit more balanced, you could say you have more base. Does that make any sense? Good question. I don't know if Cliff had.
Yes, that makes sense. My
Yeah.
4-year-old was asking me questions just now, so it took me a second.
Yeah, what another sense they've been into a lot more recently is core. But, somebody was describing, believe it or not, describing Stephen Curry. Okay. And the Warriors have a younger player. And he came in, because he was not supposed to be drafted in the first round, but the Warriors took him because they were drafting really late. And he didn't do very well. And then he got better and better and better. And by the end of the year, everybody's going, hey, this guy's a player. And so this one commentator or this coach was saying, yeah, when this guy Jordan came up, he had skills, but they weren't organized. Okay? And so he said, as he kept going, one thing, that it said, if you watch Curry, for example, he has a base, his footwork, boom, his footwork. Okay? Now, what the coach next said is, and he was describing this younger player's development, but he also kind of emphasizing what Curry did. When you get the base, you start to develop the core. And that those sensei's been much more into core. These days, he likes to even not talk about core, he talks about the character. But what happens is when your idea and your lower sport energy start to go into more balance, which is ongoing, what happens is, okay, I'm going to be he who stands from the chair. Well, likewise, I'm going to be he who settles into the chair. There's a character, isn't there? So, in those sense, they kind of went from going base to working core, and now he talks about the character, which confuses the hell out of people. I mean, the number of people that talk to me and they say, okay, when he's talking about the character, he means A, B, C, and I go back to the dose that it's like, so and so, your student said you meant A, B, C by character. Those sense it feels like pulling his hair out. He said, really? I thought, yeah, because there's an area when you verbalize something, you better be coming from that balance. There's an element when you have that of some kototama. Okay? You can't have the kototama from the idea of it. Okay? And so, what is tricky right there is that, there are different, the words change. So when you heard Nado Sensei talk, he was talking about bass. Okay. And a lot of his older students can't let go of that, by the way. Because you get to be attached to bass. But what happens? You get the bass. To some level, the action shifts into the core. Boom. And this coach said, Curry is just so masterful because he gets his bass. And I haven't watched it recently, but I studied an instructional series of his basketball for beginners. And he said it beautifully. He just says, okay, he's talking about, the actual bass, or and it's your footwork. If you don't have your footwork, you're lost. What am I going to do? No, you're going to do that. But then, if I get your footwork, you can't function. You know what's going on, and you're better. But the way that Curry explained it, I thought it was beautiful. He said, okay, there's this and there's that, describing that. And he said, then it all explodes through your core. And people say, he's got the fastest release in the league. It has nothing to do with how fast his wrist moves. It's that everything, he's got that bass, boom, and the core lights up. The core lights up. The release is part of that core movement. And in that moment, he's the greatest shooter in history. That's his character. All right. I was watching some semi-replays of his college games, and his little, I don't know. I mean, it was a little bit like just this little tiny nothing school in North Carolina called Davidson, and they would upset major powers when he was playing. He was so good. LeBron James made a special trip just to watch him play, and there was a couple of shots of LeBron going, wow. But Curry would cut from the hoop out past the three-point line, catch, turn, and shoot, and make it in one motion. And I remember the commentary, how much work must he put in to be able to coordinate his footwork, his vision, his tactile sense of the ball, to where he's running out past the three-point line, catching, turning, and shooting in one synchronized explosion. And yeah, he puts work in because it's constant misogi. The basket doesn't change. What's going on in the court and where we are within ourselves is constantly changing. So to get that base of those things, or to understand, okay, I am going to cut to the head of the key, which means he has to run, and his defender doesn't know where he's going to go, so he's going to have a step and a half. And then I'm going to catch, and that defender is usually a bigger guy, and I'm going to look at the hoop in one motion, and boom. And it's all going to, off the proper base, explode through my core, whether that's Mikyo, or Irimi Nage, or Kokyuho. It's the same in Aikido. You establish, once you get the balance idea, and the energy is a support half, you can know how to do it and not be able to do it. The knowledge is there, but the support half isn't. So there's no character. Now, if you say Stephen Curry, everybody goes, they understand it. I remember when Stephen Curry was a member of the Golden State Warriors, who were a crap team. And yeah, people kind of knew him from college, but didn't look like he was going to go anywhere. And all of a sudden, boom. You say, in other words, when you put that together and you get that character there, so Nado Sensei refers to, he doesn't talk about base much anymore, but base is there. And now you went from base to core to character. So sometimes he's very difficult because I go, how are you talking about a character? And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, okay, this to this to this. Okay, makes sense. I mean, you know, that's why he's tough to follow. When Robert Fraser was doing the explanation and he was doing more the embodiment, it's not that his explanations were bad then. No. And it wasn't that Robert Fraser couldn't embody. They were just a really good team. You see what I mean? Because Fraser Sensei would give it to you in terms you understood. And sometimes with Nadeau Sensei, if you don't, you know, there are people that have been with him for a long time that don't know what he's talking about. It's true. But they think they do. And to some degree, they have some level of this balance he's been trying to teach. Okay.
I've always kind of assumed it's because Nadeau Sensei spent time hanging out with O Sensei and no one knew what O Sensei was talking about either.
Yeah, I mean, you know, part of it also which you get sometimes, all right, is called the stubbornness factor. Okay, I'm a white, undereducated guy in this country who distrusts the government. So I like Donald Trump because he stands up to all those crazy politicians. And yeah, he's my man. Yeah, even though I'm out of work and my family's got the coronavirus, I still love Donald. That's sometimes there's an area where they don't change. And Nadeau Sensei, oftentimes I'm talking to him, he doesn't like a lot of what I say because he's very set within his parameters. Okay. And he doesn't want to hear another word until he processes it as his word. So usually, you know, I go, okay, you know, the mountain's not going to come to me. I got to go to the mountain. So I adopt his language. But over the, you know, the years, I get okay. You used to talk about base under. And then there's been a lot of time with core. He doesn't like that word anymore. But there's always this thing called character, right? When you get the idea and the energy in some form of balance, you can be a meditator. See, I want to meditate, but I can't stop my thinking. I want to scratch my nose. I can't focus, all right? Yeah, okay. I want to meditate. I'm getting the energy to meditate. Sometimes you get that prickly because I'm not used to the energy coming in. Flies land on my nose. The whole world goes nuts. How can I meditate with the state of the country and the pandemic? Well, good time to meditate. But the energy of the meditation, see, it's the idea. Now here the energy comes in. So I'm not slouched over and I'm not rigidly trying to hold a meditation posture and then just going that way. My breath starts to kind of get a little more in sync with itself. Even though it's not a body practice, my hips are more aligned and my back is straighter. The chest part opens a bit. And so it's not a body practice, but the energy coming in, you use the body somewhat as a gauge for it. And if I go back over all that noise that I couldn't get out of, all of a sudden now I'm in a more meditative place. So that support half is actually important. Now, the other thing we discussed, which is a little bit more controversial, okay, is a lot of times when you start to get the lower support half, there are things that come up which are kind of, sometimes we'll just use the term, they're unsettling. Like one of the things that Nadeau Sensei, you know, was talking about, you know, as he meditated, and all of a sudden he kind of gets the white hot poker up the rear end. and you know, he brought that up, but he didn't talk about that much these days. But you know, he would do these meditation classes after an Aikido session when we had the retreats in Dominican College. just to bring that up, because, basically it's like sometimes the lower half, if you're a little too up here or a little too idealistic, it shakes you up. And so sometimes you get that, so you just got to be easy with it, because you got to remember it's a meditation space. All right. Sometimes you get fire there. You're afraid of being burned. Yeah, no. And if I was, up in some of the fires in Sonoma, that's real fire. But, fire, water, drowning, fire, water, fire, steam, purification. See, if you take it into a ritual, you do it as a ritual. And to some degree, what happens is you're protected that way. Because, okay, ritual. But when you are right here, now, for example, there's the hesitancy right there. I just went like that and go, what's going on here? Well, part of me is just locked up. So if I can just be easy, what's going on? Well, my image a little bit is, I'm like in a spy movie, and the floor goes this way, and underneath are a whole bunch of sharp spears, and I catch myself. As I'm looking down there, and I see all these sharp points, and I'm going, holy crap. But this can be easy with it because it's a meditation space. And what I find right there, I let go of a lot right here. And all of a sudden, the spears are like a golden lawn. So I can actually kind of sink in and cross my legs and enjoy kind of the splendor of that. But initially that under showed to me, when I get that little blip, I go, what is this? I go, oh my God, spy show. I tricked the trap door, and all of a sudden there are all those sharp points ready. Easy. And sometimes you get things like, like fire-breathing dragons, it's a meditation space. So, but, you get that little, what is it? Okay. Well, the Kundalini, for example, is often called the serpent energy. So the outer out there, when I kind of open to it, is actually a more experiential sense of maybe something I've read or studied or even tried to practice. So, I don't know the best way of phrasing, but sometimes what happens when you start to get a little deeper, you got to realize you got to be able to flip things. In other words, you go, oh my gosh. Like, just looking down there at all those sharp spear points, I go, huh? But, there was one time when I was in Japan. Sometimes you call in things that you're not prepared for. So, I was living in a dorm, where it was a dorm for employees of a luxury hotel, but Hikisuchi Sensei was the owner of the hotel. So we were renting for very tiny amounts, really, because we were Aikido students, being able to stay in the dorm rooms, which were small. There was a communal kitchen and a bathroom and a bath, so it was pretty cool.
Come on in.
Yeah, and so what happened?
Leaving my conference.
I said I'm going to go up.
How are you today?
Where I would do like Tai Chi there, and then I could do Tai Chi out there, but unless it was raining. And so what happened is, and I said, well, I'm going to practice some chanting. And I did this chant. And then when I went this way, I pulled something in. And that's one of the few times in my life I got so scared I ran. And I ran down to where the other foreigners were, figuring, I'm with other people, it's gonna, it's not gonna affect me. I'm just kind of in this weird space. And then what happened is, the other people there looked at me, says, "What did you do?" So it wasn't just my perception. And I explained what I did. And so we all went into one of the rooms, and I chanted the Amatsu Noriko, and it cleared everything, except for me. What happened, I've told the story before. I'm in my room, and all night I see rotting corpses floating past my window. I mean, I got some sleep. I wake up and I see rotting corpses going across the window. And then, what happened is, when the sun comes in, all of a sudden we're back to normal. And then somebody told Heikisuchi Sensei about that. And so he called me into his office. He goes, "You called up an evil spirit. I heard about it." And I apologized. And he said, you shouldn't fool around with that stuff. He said, the only place you should really do that stuff is either in the dojo or at a shrine. Okay? And so what was interesting, I told that to Nado Sensei, and he said, "Don't believe him." He said, all energies at their source are pure. And so, one of my experiences when I first started going to the San Jose dojo, I would sleep overnight again on Friday nights. I would teach Friday nights, and then I teach the kids, and then I teach the late morning dull class. Okay, I was in that. I was in the office, I was sleeping in the office, and all of a sudden that energy came up. And so what I did is I just said, okay, this time I'm not going to run. So I just sat with it. It was, like Fear Warrior, and somebody's coming at you with a spear point. If you try to get away, you're going to die. So you just root and ground and try to blend, right? Okay. And then it was later that, I was involved in that car accident where all of a sudden my brakes give out, going over Highway 17 to San Jose to pick up Mary Jaime Sensei. And I'm just off the road in the shadows. And all of a sudden there's a sense where I sense a tree and something says, go right for it. Because if I'm just random, I'm going to hit a tree, flip the car, probably die. And then I hit that tree head on. And I blanked out for a second. I was holding the top half of the steering wheel. It had come off. The car started about a foot or so from the windshield. It was that sort of impact. My glasses, I was using dries to grab, came off of that impact, and it opened the cut. I still have that area where I was sewn up. People pulled me out, took me to Good Samaritan Hospital. I took my pulse rate. It was 60. I was totally okay. But that whole sense of what was, what came up when I did the chant was it was dark. And it was scary. But I realized almost like that same energy when I hit the shadow, when I knew I was off the road, and it was so fast I couldn't think. But got the sense. There's a tree, go for it, was that same energy, but it was a protector now. And so that sometimes those things show as a type of, like spear points underneath the trapdoor or something like that, or Nado Sensei's favorite is the hot poker of the rear. And, there's a point where, sometimes your life experience is like that whole thing with the rooftop in Japan and also the car accident. In fact, Mary Jaime Sensei, I believe, and I called a friend because I had to still pick Mary up. And so he came, and then we went to the junkyard, and they both looked at that car and said, how'd you come out of that? And I just said, well, I guess it was the Kuni. Because in a sense, when I was screaming down in the dark right there, I had no sense of what to do, but I was okay there. And I got this, it's almost like Obi-Wan from the Source saying, Chuck, there's something there, it's counterintuitive. You go for that tree and hit it, and you'll be okay. And the Force will be with you. That was pretty much it if we use popular archetypes. I didn't get the words, but I really got that sense from an interior place. Anyway, I think what we ought to do is probably, anybody with a question or anything else? Okay, anyway, so we're gonna call it for the day then. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.
Okay, take care.
So if we're not recording anymore,